action. What's going on, guys? I'm Chris and welcome back to another video. So today I'm going through my top 10 favorite movie directors of all time. I've made this video on the channel before, but this is my updated current list. And before I get into this thing, be sure to hit that like button, comment down below your favorite movie directors, subscribe and hit that notification bell to help reach my goal of 85,000 subscribers here on the channel. And of course, check out my Patreon link down below for extra content, access to the Discord server, and more. Anything goes a very long way. And again, these are just my personal favorite directors. So coming in at number 10 for me is Shawn Levy, who is known for directing lots of films from my childhood growing up, so I have some nostalgia for his work, but at the same time, he's done work on Stranger Things as a director, so I have to factor that in. He's directed the Night at the Museum films, a movie called The Internship starring Vince Vaughn and Owen Wilson. He directed Cheaper by the Dozen. More recently, he did The Adam Project and Free Guy, and he just has the ability to direct a film with this overwhelming feeling of feel good. Every one of those movies that I just listed has the ability to warm your heart by the end and make you feel like you're getting a big ol' hug as you watch through the movies. There's this charming nature to every single one of his films, and I just admire so much of his work. Plus, it's my way to get a shout out to Stranger Things on here because he did direct some of the best episodes the show has to offer, notably Dear Billy, which this poster is representative of. I just want to give a shout out to Shawn Levy. He's also going to be directing Deadpool 3, which is my most anticipated film of next year. I have full confidence that he will knock it out of the park with that one. My number 9 on my list is James Gunn. He's done the Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy and the Suicide Squad, as well as some other films. He's got, work on Superman Legacy coming up, but the Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy is really what has him on this list for me. The ability for James Gunn to take this group of characters that, weren't really that popular until they got a movie made about them and make them so easy to resonate with into a family that we know and love dearly. It's really impressive. He did the same thing with the Suicide Squad. Not only was that movie distinctly James Gunn with his, directorial style and flair, but it took a group of characters that was pretty outlandish and wacky, made them easy to relate to, and you loved them by the end of the film. James Gunn is just the man when it comes to directing comic book films. Like, he's in contention for one of, if not the greatest comic book movie directors of all time. He's directed the Guardians trilogy and, like I mentioned, the Suicide Squad, and I have full faith in him to come in and run the ship over at DC, starting with Superman Legacy, the movie he's directing in 2025. Of course, he's overseeing a lot more, but his abilities as a director never fail to, blow me away, especially writing as well. He's a very impressive filmmaker, and there's some of his work I haven't checked out that I need to. Number 8 on my list is PTA, Paul Thomas Anderson, a legendary filmmaker. He has made some critically acclaimed films over the years, my favorite being Boogie Nights, but he's also done Magnolia. His first film was Hard 8. I actually prefer his run in the 90s to some of the more modern films that he's worked on. There Will Be Blood is one of his more popular films. Of course, he's done The Master, Punch Drunk Love. The list goes on and on with Paul Thomas Anderson. His most recent movie was Licorice Pizza, which I enjoyed, but I haven't watched since theaters. But PTA is in the same vein as like Tarantino to me, where it's this classic 90s feel to a lot of his movies. I prefer his earlier work. Boogie Nights is the standout for me, but the 1-2 punch of Boogie Nights and Magnolia is what really has PTA on this list. He's not afraid to make these grand in scale movies that at times can get a little complex and annoyingly ambiguous, if you will, specifically as we move later on in the 2000s. Like The Master is such a well-crafted movie with outstanding performances. I just failed to really resonate with the story. I really feel in the 90s with Boogie Nights and Magnolia, he was on top of it with his A game. And I still have to watch Inherent Vice and I believe Phantom Thread, and then I'll have seen all of his filmography. But I had to put PTA on this list. Shout out Philip Seymour Hoffman for being in a lot of these films and crushing it. Rest in peace to a true GOAT. Number 7 is James Wan. This is the big horror director that I have on my list. I've recently explored a lot more of James Wan's filmography, specifically the Conjuring films and the Insidious films. He directed the first 2 in both of those respective franchises, and James Wan's ability to create tension from the opening shot of a film to the moment the credits roll is what earns him a spot on this list. He's got a clear style, he knows how to direct horror, and he does it so well in all 4 of those movies that I just mentioned. There's this eerie, dreadful feel from the moment the film starts, and it honestly has me on edge. Like, some of these films, I physically start to tense up and just my heart rate increases. He knows how to direct horror so well, and he started with Saw, which is one of, if not my favorite horror films. There's some fantastic reveals along the way during that movie, but that movie proved how great of a filmmaker he is. With such a low budget, he was able to create this confined horror thriller with a disturbing feel. But then he has the ability to go direct these big budget films like Aquaman or Furious 7, which I feel a lot of his style doesn't get to shine through in those because they're these big studio products rather than his actual work. But anything he's done in the horror genre that I've seen is amazing. Even Malignant, a movie that gets a little wacky and sort of stupid at the end, not really making sense at times even, it's fully his vision through and through, and I respect him for that. James Wan needs to come back and do The Conjuring 4. That will immediately be one of my most anticipated films moving forward. Next we got David Fincher. This is one of the few directors where I've seen every single one of their films. I actually have a ranking somewhere on the channel, but he's got a new movie coming out this year called The Killer. David Fincher is one of the most iconic directors ever. He's not only done The Social Network, which is a top 10 favorite movie of all time for me, but he's directed Fight Club and Seven. Both of those movies are 90s hits that have insane reveals or twists in the films. He also directed The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, which I feel goes under the radar. And then, of course, you got Gone Girl and Zodiac. So a lot of his films are these sort of dark crime thriller pieces that make you feel so uneasy through and through. But then you've got the biopic that is The Social Network, which is an all-time great movie as he paired up with Aaron Sorkin. I've seen video interviews with David Fincher, and apparently he does the most takes out of like any director. He will constantly redo takes until he gets it absolutely perfect. And I saw him and Ben Affleck joking about it, Affleck, you know, kind of picking on him for how many takes they actually have to do on his films. But if it works, it works. It pays off. I mean, all of his movies are pretty good. And then we've got the few films that are misses for me, notably Alien 3, and I honestly don't like Mank all that much either. But the rest of his work, even Panic Room and The Game, are really solid thriller movies. So David Fincher easily earned a spot on this list. Bringing us into my top 5, I've got Martin Scorsese himself. The man has a truly impressive filmography. I have not seen every movie he's directed. There's a big chunk of Scorsese films that I've missed out on, but I can say far and away he is the ultimate mob movie director with films like Goodfellas, The Departed, he's done Casino. Then you've got his 70s projects like Mean Streets and Taxi Driver. Then you roll around to 2000s, you've got The Departed, The Wolf of Wall Street, I mean, The Irishman, the list goes on and on. He's got a very, very impressive filmography, working with actors like De Niro and DiCaprio, but of course, Pacino that one time in The Irishman. Scorsese has a distinct style with his direction. A lot of his films are going to be about 3-hour-long epics that drain you emotionally, but they're so rewarding to watch. A lot of them are fascinating glimpses into the mob life, but all around, Scorsese just knows how to tell a story, and it's so impressive. He's got Killers of the Flower Moon coming out later this year. He is one of the longest spanning careers in cinema without question, and I'm really excited for his new movie. Next on my list is Damien Chazelle, the youngest director on this list, I would say, and someone who really hasn't missed for me at all. Whiplash is in my top almost 5 favorite movies of all time. La La Land's definitely top 20 for me. Then you've got First Man and Babylon, and all of these movies are incredible for their own reasons. He's proven he can make musicals with La La Land, but that movie's also got a beautiful message about true love versus your true passion and how sometimes not everything can always land the way your life plans it to. Whiplash is an incredible feat. I mean, J.K. Simmons' performance alone is awesome, but the signature move with Damien Chazelle is like the swivel shots where it'll go back and forth between characters. I love that directorial style. First Man is definitely the most different film that he's made in my opinion, where it's the space biopic in a way, and then Babylon is the most divisive one in recent years. I loved the movie. It's got a lot to say about the current state of Hollywood and what it takes to be a star. How far are you willing to go? But it's also sort of a critique of the Hollywood system. Lots to dive into with that film. I think it's masterfully made, but a lot of people also think it's a mess. Even though Babylon was so divisive and didn't do well at the box office, Damien Chazelle hasn't missed for me personally, and I think about his movies constantly. Not only are they well made, but they have perfect casts, and the scores in his films always hit. My top 3 are constantly revolving, so this could change on any given day, but at 3 I've got Quentin Tarantino. I've said before he's my favorite director, but right now I have him at number 3. He has made some of my favorite films, from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Inglourious Basterds, Pulp Fiction, Reservoir Dogs, Django Unchained. The list goes on and on. The man does not miss. He has no bad movies, and he writes and directs all of his films, so his style is fully on display through and through here. Tarantino's dialogue is absolutely a strong point of his films, but when it comes down to his direction, he just makes movies that are so damn cool. Like, the shot selection is so impressive, his films look beautiful, and they're so damn immersive. Like in Pulp Fiction, 2 dudes could be literally talking about a cheeseburger, and I'm so invested with the way that Tarantino shoots the movie. He makes some of the sleekest, just coolest movies to watch that I can't help but enjoy, making him my number 3 favorite director. But my runner-up right now is Christopher Nolan, whose Oppenheimer just hit theaters. Nolan is almost my favorite. I gotta talk about some of the classics my number 1 has made, but Christopher Nolan has not made a bad movie either, nor has Quentin Tarantino. Nolan continues to impress even with Oppenheimer. That movie's almost like the culmination of everything I love about him as a director. He's got the Dark Knight trilogy under his belt, Inception, Interstellar, The Prestige. The list goes on and on. The man simply does not miss. A lot of his films have these reveals that will leave your jaw on the floor. But what I love about Nolan is his distinct style of making these films almost out of order. You almost have to put the pieces of the puzzle together along the way, and it makes for a thought-provoking watch that's going to challenge the viewer at times, but it's so rewarding every time by the time the credits roll. I can't help but love Christopher Nolan as director. Nolan is a mastermind. I don't even know how so much information can fit in his brain, but taking the top spot for me is Steven Spielberg. I'd say he's the most iconic filmmaker of all time. He's made Raiders of the Lost Ark, Jurassic Park, Jaws, E.T., the list goes on and on, Schindler's List, Saving Private Ryan. The man really doesn't miss. He's been nominated for Best Director, I think, every single decade since the 1970s, I want to say. He's still making films and changing up his style, as he pulled off the West Side Story musical, which is better than the first now, I think. But what really captivates me with Steven Spielberg is his ability to make these magical, charming, and adventurous movies, whether that is Raiders of the Lost Ark or Jaws, where there's this sense of terror at times in those films, but adventure reigns supreme. You also got films like E.T., which just captured this whimsical nature of being a child and honestly feel like pure magic when you watch them on screen. But then he conquers really serious subject material like Schindler's List or Saving Private Ryan, and he won Best Director for both of those films, rightfully so. He's a versatile director with an extremely diverse filmography, conquering animated films, musicals, war films, adventure films. I mean, the man can do no wrong. Sure, he's got some missteps along the way, some films that definitely aren't all that, but he has made some of the most iconic movies ever. He's proven over decades that he can adapt to the times and make movies that appeal to modern day audiences. He has pushed the boundaries for innovation in films with Jaws, terrifying a whole generation of people, Raiders of the Lost Ark being a definitive adventure film, and then Jurassic Park bringing dinosaurs to life on the big screen. He's one of, if not the outright GOAT movie directors, putting him at #1 on my all-time favorite movie directors list. But that's just my top 10 right now. This list could change tomorrow. Who knows? I'm constantly watching new directors' films, and more films from directors on this list or not on this list, so this is kind of an ever-changing thing. But let me know your favorite directors in the comments down below, and be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to that notification bell to help me reach my goal of 85,000 subscribers here on the channel, and of course check out my Patreon link down below for extra content as well as access to the Discord server. Anything goes a long way over there. But thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, I'll see you guys later.